Hi there, David Cristello here from Jetpack Workflow and Growing Your Firm podcast. Today I want to walk you through a sample 1120 process sheet that you can use inside your firm. Now, of course, if you're viewing this anywhere but the blog, you can always go to jetpackworkflow.com/blog to get free interviews, free articles, and many more free videos as well. So with that in mind, let's go through the process sheet. I'm actually going to go into my Google Doc here and zoom in a little bit so we can take a look at the couple different buckets that I recommend using inside of your process sheet. First, we have what I call the foundation. Of course, we have the job name or service, the client name, contact info, and then we start building out some really foundational elements that can really elevate your process sheet and really give you a lot of transparency across your workflow and across your process and ultimately across your firm. So the first thing would be price to client. We make sure we have that. Budgeted hours. So we already are getting a target profit margin, so we can look at the budgeted hours, internal price, price to client, partner, manager, any additional team members, file information, so the location of where you're going to be uploading the documentation, the date in, target date out, so maybe it's 10 days, maybe it's 5 days, maybe it's 15 days, and then this happens after actual date out, and then target turnaround, again, 10, 15 days. Then we have the due date and the extension date. If you're going to be tracking, of course, tax returns, specifically 1120s, you want this in here. If you're going to be using a process sheet for bookkeeping, of course, you can leave this out. So a quick note on why we track turnaround time. A number of firms have been using turnaround time to really hone in on their internal process and track their internal efficiencies. And it's also a really nice way to prioritize work based on when you actually received it from the client. So it's a great way to actually improve the client relationship by prioritizing those that submitted their work earlier. So again, that's the date in, target date out, actual date out, and then we have the target turnaround time, whether it's 10 or 15 days. Typically 15 days is kind of the top end of the spectrum for a lot of the firms we work with. But again, it's really up to you. It's just about having transparency around the target turnaround time. You can even communicate this with the client. But again, you want to start tracking turnaround time once you've confirmed that you received all the documentation that you need from that client. Because of course, as we know, sometimes clients don't submit all their work on time. So you really want to make sure that when you've triggered or when you put that date in, it really means that there's information that you need, that all the information that you need has been received and you're ready to go. Then we go into a bit of the fulfillment. Now, we have a thing called status and urgency. This is where, across your firm, you should have a standard status. You should have, maybe urgency levels. You might have custom labels that you would attach into this section. But the point is that across the firm, everybody should know how to move work and identify different stages or different bottlenecks within that process sheet. So this would be the status and urgency level. And then we move into the actual fulfillment. So we have a number of tasks, the owner, the due date. You can even put in allocated hours per task, so 1 hour, 2 hours, 5 hours. Of course, you want to make sure that the total hour duration from a task level matches the budgeted hours on a job. Of course, there's software that will make sure this is automated, but if you're using a process sheet, of course, you just want to make sure that these add up. So again, the task, owner, due date. You could include a place to add notes on a task level, documents on a task level, and again, those budgeted hours, it's entirely up to you. But the minimum, of course, would be task, owner, due date, and whether there's an actual due date or they're dependent on the previous one. And then we have a general notes and comments section. And then I always like to include any kind of billable information, whether you're collecting that up front or afterwards. Really make sure to get that. We're big advocates of either getting paid upfront or having that final meeting and requesting that the client brings that check to that final meeting. And if they don't, having a payment processor in-house so we can just clear out all payments and the client isn't aggravated trying to track down bills and you're not aggravated trying to track down their payments. So we're big advocates of building in the payment within the process sheet and within the workflow. In fact, I would make one of these tasks collect payments, and if you're building out the workflow diagram, again, one of those boxes would be collect payment from the client. And then finally, perhaps my favorite section inside of the process sheet, which is the final metrics review. This is where we look at budgeted hours versus actual hours. We look at the actual turn, so we see the budgeted turn at the top, but now we can look at the actual turnaround time. Okay, so then we add up and we calculate internal cost versus client price, and we get the profit margin. So there's really three metrics that I'm trying to look at: actual hours, actual turn, and profit margin. Are we on the right track? Is it the number of hours, turn, and profit margin? That really gives us an understanding of how effective we're being with all of our internal processes inside of the firm or practice. So these are really, 3 metrics that are phenomenal for tracking the workflow and process within your firm and see if you need to optimize or if you're on track. Now, of course, you can track additional things like, number of service deliverables per client, average revenue per client, lifetime value of client, all these additional kind of growth metrics that we're big fans of as well. But from an internal process perspective, we're really big fans of turnaround time, actual hours, and profit margin to really help you maximize that process sheet and ultimately the profitability of your firm or practice. If you would like to get more free articles, free interviews, free videos, we do update all of the information at jetpackworkflow.com/blog. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to share it with a friend or colleague or pass it along to your team. As always, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. And again, if you want to learn more, go ahead and visit jetpackworkflow.com or jetpackworkflow.com/blog for a lot of free training and free articles on growing your firm. Thank you so much for watching.